Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Bernard Nzau from the University of Salford, Manchester, UK, and my presentation is entitled Affordable Housing Provision in Informal Settlements Through Land Value Capture and Inclusionary Housing. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome. Thank you. As an introduction, we know that the world urban population is increasing at a very high rate. In 2015, the world urban population was 54%, and that is projected to increase to 66% in the year 2050. And therefore, this poses challenges to urban planners and to policymakers in particularly in developing countries. And the challenge is in affordable housing. And as the UN Habitat has said, housing has largely become unaffordable, and therefore there is urgent needs for affordable housing in our countries. Uh, Coming to Kenya, the problem we have is that the government has a cumulative deficit of over 2 million housing units, which are required. And a city like Nairobi has a target of 150,000 housing units, and is only able to deliver 10% of that every year. And as a result, we have got a lot of informal settlements and slums in the city, and currently 61% of the urban population in Nairobi live in either slums or informal settlements, as can be seen in this picture. Now, this brings us to the research question, which is, how can urban public policy facilitate slums regeneration, increase affordable housing, and enhance social inclusion in cities of developing countries? Now, the methodology that we are applying this study is a single case study of a slum in Nairobi called Kibera. And in order to be able to proceed with the research, we have done market analysis, both informal transaction within the slum itself, and also of formal transactions around the estates which surround in the estates which surround the slum. We have used mixed data sourcing, semi-structured interviews, questionnaires which have been administered to planners, lawyers, real estate experts, developers, slumlords, community leaders, and residents of the slum. We have also used direct observation. We have looked at official reports, from offices, and also from the internet in order to be able to analyze existing and previous programs. And at the end, we have developed prototypes, which we are testing to see whether our model is going to work. And we have also used residue land value analysis for determining the residue values that developers will be willing to pay if they are going to participate in this program. And I'm going to explain later what residue land value analysis are. As part of the literature, challenges in slum upgrading are basically related to the following: financial constraint. That is the main impediment to slum upgrading. And there's also issue of land problems which are there, because most of the land is either not developable, it cannot be developed because it's either in areas which are prone to flooding, or the land is either private land which needs to be bought from the owners. There are many land-based issues. Then, thirdly, there is resistance from the slumlords and slum dwellers. Most of the slum dwellers and the structure owners, they resist because they are not sure about the future. Once the upgrading is done, they are not sure whether they are going to benefit from the units which will result from there. Then number four, there is conflicting interest among the stakeholders. There are so many stakeholders in the slums, and they include politicians, they include the local administrators, they include religious leaders, non-governmental organizations, and most of the time they are conflicting. They don't agree on the way forward, and therefore that brings us back in terms of the upgrading process. There's also a lack of political will. We do not have political will in the country. the government has always said that it is for slum upgrading, but when you look at the priorities, it is never prioritized in terms of funding. It's never prioritized in terms of planning, and therefore it is completely lacking political will. Then there is the issue of social segregation. The slum dwellers are always segregated. Partially, they are already segregated because they live in an area that is not habitable, separated from civilization and all that. But then again, they are also segregated when it comes to making decisions on upgrading itself. The planners do not engage them. And then at the end of the day, the project may not be able to succeed because the people who are supposed to benefit, the people who are affected, are not involved. All those challenges have been noted in the city of Nairobi and as contributing to the slow pace of upgrading. Now, affordable housing policies in Kenya. I want us to look now at the policies which the government has put in place over the years. In the early 1930s up to 1960s, there was what is called public housing, where the government, particularly through the local administration, local authorities, invested in public housing. That did not last long. In the mid-1960s, government funding towards that project went down, and in the 80s, they started what is called the site and services schemes through mostly donors like the World Bank. And through land being serviced, people were allocated land to develop their own houses. But that did not go far, and most of the projects have stalled. Then slum upgrading project was started in the 1980s, and it is still ongoing in many slums in the country. And of course, there is very slow process. Civil servant housing scheme came in the early 2000s, and this is targeted towards civil servants, where the government develops units which are sold to civil servants. But again, affordability is a big issue, and only senior civil servants are able to afford. Those in the low cadre cannot really afford. Then lastly, they brought the affordable housing program in the year 2017. This is geared towards producing what they call what they are saying will be 500 units before the year 2022. But again, the phase of it is still very slow, and right now we've got less than 5% of the target achieved 2 years, actually 2.5 years before 2022, which is the set deadline. Now, we have to think now about a sustainable approach to slum upgrading, and this research is about that. So towards a sustainable approach to slum upgrading, we need to look at main issues which is leading us to that. First, we need to embrace sustainable approaches. It's all over the literature that sustainable approaches to slum upgrading is the key. Then secondly, we need to identify barriers to effective slum regeneration and introduce incentives for change. Let's look at the barriers and see how to tackle those barriers by giving incentives, particularly from the sources of the challenges. Then thirdly, we need to adopt approaches and policy tools that assure better outcomes. We have looked at approaches which have not worked, tools which have not worked. Then we must stop them and look at other approaches which are working. If they are not working in our country, they are working elsewhere. Let's see how we can adopt them. Fourthly, we need to change land use regulations, particularly to higher densities, because land is becoming scarce. Densification is the key and is the way forward in many cities. Therefore, we must adopt it, and then that must be adopted with a well-focused land value capture mechanism, so that when we increase density and increase land value, we must find a way of trying to capture that value for public benefit. And then lastly, we need to tap financial resources from the private sector. And we will do this by harnessing the market through tackling the failures of that market. And actually the failure of the land market, the land and housing market, is the main source of housing challenges. And therefore, if we target the housing market, we fix it, we tap the resources, we tap or we harness its strength, then we can likely use the market to generate affordable housing for our people. So, towards a sustainable approach to upgrading, the solution that this research proposes is that we turn to the market using two tools. One, the land value capture and inclusionary housing. I want to explain what land value capture is and what inclusionary housing is. Inclusionary housing are basically land use regulations, which are requiring developers of market rate units to set aside a portion of their units as affordable. This happens through incentives which are given by the government, so that, as I said before, when you increase density, like you see in this figure here, the maximum allowed density height in this area was at this level. But when the government increases the height to this level, it requires the developer to produce affordable units of equivalent to around 20%. This is just an illustration. What about land value capture? These are tools which require and use for public benefit part of any increment in land value which results from public policy and or investment. As you can see in this figure here, if this is an industrial land, the value is up to this. And when there is a government policy to rezone that land, the value increases up to this level. That means this is the increment, and what land value capture requires is that we capture part of that increment, as demonstrated here in red. Sustainable approach to upgrading. Now, what this research is proposing in Nairobi, particularly in Kibera slum, is as follows. Kibera slum is in public land. Public land which is prime, which is very close to the CBD, which is surrounded by very nice estates with very high values. Therefore, the land is in a very good locality and it can be utilized for housing. So, what we need to do is to convert the land from public to private status and then approve high density residential high-rise flats and plan the land in a proper way. That will automatically enhance its value. Once that enhancement is done, then capture that part of that enhancement by requiring those who are going to be allocated that land to provide some houses for slum dwellers. Then developers, as they build affordable housing for the slum dwellers, they will also build some market units so that they can be able to recoup their investment. Now, we went ahead now to analyze the subdivision potential of our proposal in the study area. In Kibera, land is divided into different villages, and each village has an administration, it has a chief, and all that. And what we are proposing in our approach is that upgrading is being done village by village. And we started, the government started upgrading Soweto village, which was done, Soweto village was subdivided into 4 zones, zone A, B, C, and D. The government has only upgraded zone A, and currently they have started doing zone B. That has taken almost more than 10 years, and it is a small area. Whereas the whole of Kibera is over is close to is 2.5 square kilometers, which means and the government has implemented upgrading in a very small fraction of that land. So we have taken a very small area of zone C and D of Soweto East, part of Kibera, and the total area of those 2 zones is 8.1 hectares. In our analysis and with interviews with planners and experts, we have come to arrive at that at 40% should be removed for surfaces social services, and infrastructure. Therefore, from 8.1 hectares, we remove 3.24, which is 40%. That we remain with 4.86 hectares. Once we remain with 4.6 hectares, then we can now subdivide that land into units of land that can be developed with IRIS. And we have determined through comparative analysis of other estates within Nairobi, which house low-income people, that a plot of 40 feet by 80 feet, which is 0.03 hectares, is adequate for that development. And we have, from that, we divide 4.86 by 0.03, it gives us 162 land assets within that area. Now, we have done market survey. We have worked in Kibera. We have looked at the population of Kibera currently and the future, what could be. We have found that by the time this development is going to end, we are going to be required to house 11,250 people. Therefore, and again, also through ground survey and interviews with households, we have determined that the number of persons in a household in Kibera are 6. So using that data, we will need to provide 11,250 divided by 6, which gives us 1,875 households with housing. Therefore, the number of affordable units required per land parcel is therefore 1875 divided by the number of plots, which are 162, and that gives us 11.5%, or we say 12 units per plot. Therefore, it is this to say that development in each land parcel will need to accommodate 12 households in affordable units if the model is to be successful. This is going to result into 1,944 affordable units, which is actually enough to cater for the 1875 households in the 2 zones of Soweto East Village. Now, after that, we have to use what is called residue land value analysis. This is basically to test whether if we subject these developers to these requirements, whether their projects will be visible. So this is a tool which is used to test that, and it tells us whether developers will be willing to pay any money, to put any money into the project. So this is an example of a residue land value analysis, and as we said, we determined the plot numbers, the number of plots that are going to be there, 162 plots, and in each of those 162 plots, we analyzed different prototypes of developments which can be done there. And we found that the most feasible development is this one, where each plot will carry 7 floors, with each floor, particularly ground floor, having 2 commercial units and 6 number bedsitters and studios. And from 1st floor to 6th floor, each floor will have 4 one-bedroom units and 2 studios. Then we summarize the development. That means each plot will have 2 shops at 40 meters squared, 24 number 1 bedroom, 40 meters squared, and 18 studios of 20 meters squared. In the analysis here, we just determine the revenue minus the cost, which is analyzed here, and then it gives us the residual value. In terms of the revenue, we analyzed the market around Kibera. We found that the market value of a 1-bedroom unit is 4 million. The market value of a bedsitter is 2 million. And in the previous slum upgrading project, the chief government value are determined that affordable prices for such units, a bedsitter will be 750, and a 1-bedroom will be 1.5, and shops will be 1.5. And we adopted those figures as affordable values. Then we analyzed the revenue that a developer would get from selling the 6 affordable units. He will get this. Selling the 1-bedroom affordable units, you will get this. Selling the affordable shops, you will get this. That's selling the market, let's sitters, you get this, and selling the 1-bedroom at market, you get this, and the total will come to 112 million, 112,500,000. And then because this income is not coming now, it will come after some time, probably 2 years, we deferred that income and brought it down to 100 million. Then we list the cost of construction, and the list of construction, there are costs related to the cost construction itself. Site works is the cost of capital. Someone is going to borrow money. There is the cost, the developer's profit, of which we have approximated at 30%. And then there are other costs like impact fees. Impact fees are used in inclusionary housing to provide infrastructure. Therefore, we put an impact fees of 1%. Therefore, the total construction cost came to 81 million. And when we remove this and this, we find a residual value of 18,925,000. That means that is the residue. That is the value that a developer will be willing to give for any land parcel there in order to be to participate to that project. And what these results show that with the feasibility analysis, we can show that 27% of the units which developers will be able to develop will be affordable, fully funded by the private developers. And the analysis have shown us that even with the inclusionary requirement, the land parcels would fetch 18,925,000 if they were offered in the market, and with the developers even making a profit of 30%. Now, conclusion. Tackling the problem of lands and inadequate housing will require new approaches and ideas which are innovative. And the use of land value capture and inclusionary housing has been proved here that it is feasible, and that has been done through a proper analysis of the market. And this research demonstrates that by availing land to private developers for inclusionary housing development, it is possible to meet slum residents' housing needs by including at least 27% housing in new developments entirely bought by the private sector. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.